We all saw Pepper Potts lose everything. We watched her stand tall for her daughter, a living legacy of the man who gave his life for the universe. But what if, in her grief, she tried to honor Tony Stark by finishing his one ultimate mission? A suit of armor around the world, a mission that had already gone catastrophically wrong once before. This is the fan theory that suggests Pepper Potts, in a desperate move to protect her family and the world Tony died for, accidentally forges the MCU's next great monster. This is the story of how hope, grief, and the ghost of Tony Stark could create the one villain he always feared was coming. And the most chilling part? The supposed evidence for this tragic fall is woven into the very fabric of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This isn't just a theory about a new villain. It's a theory about how Iron Man's legacy could become the seed of its own darkest reflection. To even see how this could be possible, you have to put yourself back in the days right after the blip. You have to look at the world Tony Stark left behind. It wasn't just a world mourning a hero, it was a world that was dangerously exposed. For more than a decade, Tony Stark was Earth's protector. He was its shield, its futurist, its flawed guardian, who stood against terrorists, gods, and titans. His vision, his tech, and his sacrifice defined an entire era of security. And then, he was gone. This left a power vacuum on a scale we'd never seen. Think about it. The Sokovia Accords were a mess. The Avengers were scattered. And the global defense systems Tony had personally built and funded were suddenly leaderless. We got a terrifying glimpse of this chaos in Spider-Man: Far From Home. A single disgruntled ex-employee, Quentin Beck, managed to turn a few Edith drones into what looked like a world-ending threat with shocking ease. That movie was the canary in the coal mine, proving that Tony's legacy was a double-edged sword. In the right hands, it saves the world. In the wrong hands, it's the most dangerous weapon on the planet. And who was left holding the keys to all of it? Virginia Pepper Potts. We watched Pepper's journey from a brilliant executive assistant to the powerful CEO of Stark Industries. She was never on the sidelines. She ran a global tech empire, managed Tony's beautiful, volatile mind, and even wore the rescue armor herself. She understood the promise and the danger of Stark technology better than anyone. After Tony's death, she wasn't just a grieving partner. She was the inheritor of a global institution and all the immense responsibility that came with it. Stark Industries didn't just disappear. It was still one of the most powerful, influential, and advanced corporations on Earth. As CEO, Pepper would have been at the center of every conversation about global security. Governments, militaries, what's left of S.H.I.E.L.D., they would all be looking to her, looking for the next Iron Man, the next big idea to keep the world safe from the threats everyone now knew were out there. The pressure on her would have been unimaginable. She's not just running a company, she's raising her daughter in the world Tony died to save. Morgan's future is tied to the stability of the entire planet. So for Pepper, this is personal. It's not about profit or politics. Securing the world means securing her daughter's future, a future bought at the highest possible price. This is the ground where the theory takes root. A vulnerable world, a legacy of world-changing tech, and a brilliant, determined woman at the center of it all, driven by love, grief, and the need to protect her child. Pepper Potts wouldn't just sit on her hands. She would feel an overwhelming duty to act, to use Tony's tools to finish his work. But in doing so, she might just set the stage for a tragedy that makes Ultron look like a minor glitch. It's critical to state that this idea that Pepper Potts would be directly responsible for creating Dr. Doom is entirely speculative. As of mid-2025, there is absolutely no official support for this in any MCU canon or credible leak. To really get this theory, you have to understand Tony Stark's ghost. Not a literal one, but the ghost of his biggest fear, his most driving obsession. From the moment he saw that Chitauri army pour out of the sky over New York, Tony Stark was a haunted man. He saw the Endgame coming long before anyone else. This fear sparked the one ambition that defined the rest of his life, his dream of building a suit of armor around the world. That wasn't just a cool line, it was his mission. He knew he couldn't be everywhere at once. The Iron Man suit was just one man. He needed something bigger, a global security system so absolute it could stop the next invasion before it even started. This obsession is why he built the Iron Legion. It's why he poured his trauma and resources into a new global defense program. And it's why he created Ultron. Ultron is the key precedent here. It was Tony's greatest failure, a nightmare born from his best intentions. He tried to build a shield and ended up creating a sword that nearly destroyed humanity. The world saw it as an act of unbelievable arrogance, and they weren't wrong. The Sokovia Accords were written specifically because of it. But in Tony's mind, the idea wasn't wrong, just the execution. The world still needed the armor. He had just tried to build it with the wrong mind, a synthetic one. After Ultron, Tony didn't give up on the mission. He just internalized it, wrestling with the Accords and trying to work within the system. The Edith drone network he left for Peter Parker was just another version of the same idea. A powerful, centralized defense system. And once again, it showed how fast that power could be corrupted. Now think about Pepper. She lived through all of this. She saw Tony's nightmares up close. She argued with him. She supported him. And she understood his obsessive need to protect everyone. After he died, that understanding would be amplified by her grief. We often try to honor those we lose by finishing their work, by keeping their spirit alive. And what was Tony Stark's single greatest unfinished dream? That suit of armor around the world. So the theory goes like this. Pepper, now in control of Stark Industries, sees a world on a razor's edge and feels the weight of Tony's legacy. She makes a fateful choice to finally make his vision a reality. But she's determined to learn from his mistakes. No recklessness, no acting alone, no rogue AIs. The world would never trust another Stark-created AI after Ultron. No, her approach would be different. This had to be about finding the right person. She wouldn't be looking for another soldier or a hero. She'd be looking for a new Tony Stark. Someone with the intellect, the vision, and the drive to build the future of global defense. She would start a search for a futurist, a pioneer, someone who could engineer solutions on a planetary scale. And so, using Stark Industries' vast resources, its grants, its talent scouting programs, its global reach, Pepper would begin her search for the next great mind of the 21st century. She'd be looking for a successor to Tony's intellectual throne, someone brilliant, visionary, and maybe, just like Tony, a little bit dangerous. It would be an act of profound hope. But in searching for a genius to save the world, she might just find one who decides he'd rather conquer it. This is where the theory moves from why to how. Pepper has the motive, the money, and the means, but she's missing one key ingredient. Tony's specific 1 in a billion brand of inventive genius. Let's be clear. Pepper is a brilliant CEO and strategist with a deep understanding of tech. She ran a multi-billion-dollar tech company for years, but she isn't Tony. She can't walk into a cave with a box of scraps and come out with a miniature arc reactor. She knows this. She knows her strengths. But more importantly, she knows she can't build the engine for the next generation of global defense herself. So, she needs an architect. A new head of R&D for Stark Industries, but a person on a whole different level. This isn't a job you post on LinkedIn. This is a search for a legend. The theory suggests Pepper would start a quiet global talent search. She'd comb through academic papers, patent filings, and intel reports, looking for someone off the grid, a mind so brilliant it operates outside the normal systems. She wouldn't be looking for a team player. She'd be looking for a visionary. And visionaries are often difficult and arrogant, just like Tony was. She'd set up grants or a foundation in Tony's name, a perfect cover to attract and vet the world's brightest without revealing her true goal. She might meet dozens of incredible scientists, but none with that perfect storm of transcendent intellect and unbreakable will the job requires. She needs someone with a philosophy, not just a formula. And this is where our suspect enters the story. In her search, she'd eventually find a name that's both legendary and infamous in certain circles. A man from a small, obscure Eastern European nation whose work is decades ahead of its time. A man who vanished after a tragic accident and a bitter falling out with his peers. A man whose pride is only matched by his ambition. She would find or be led to Victor Von Doom. Now, in the comics, Victor Von Doom's story is tied directly to Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four. His origin involves academic rivalry, magic, and a quest for power. But the MCU loves to remix origins to fit its connected universe. They made Tony Stark Ultron's creator, not Hank Pym. They tied Spider-Man's entire journey to Tony's mentorship. So it's not just possible, but a classic MCU move to adapt Dr. Doom's origin to connect him to the biggest technological legacy in their universe, Iron Man's. In this telling, Pepper doesn't just find some random genius. She finds the one man on Earth whose intellect could truly rival Tony's. She'd read his papers, hear whispers of his experiments, blending science with something else. She'd see a mind that is fearless, relentless, and unburdened by ethics, and she might mistake that for Tony's own maverick spirit. She'd see the risks. Reports would mention his arrogance, his volatility, his messiah complex. But she would be desperate. The world is unsafe. Her daughter's future isn't guaranteed, and this man, Victor Von Doom, might be the only person who can finish what Tony started. So she makes a choice. She decides to bring this brilliant, dangerous mind out of the shadows and give him the one thing he's always wanted, unlimited resources and a stage to prove he's the greatest genius who ever lived. She would believe she could control him, using her own moral compass to guide his ambition. It would be the most tragic miscalculation of her life. So who is this Victor Von Doom that Pepper would supposedly bet the world on? To get the weight of her potential mistake, we have to look at the comics, not as a script, but as a blueprint for the character's soul. Because Dr. Doom isn't just a villain, he's an icon of ambition and tragedy. In Marvel Comics, Victor Von Doom is built on 3 pillars: his mind, his pride, and his pain. He was born in the fictional nation of Latveria to a Romani family. His mother was a sorceress, and his father was a healer. His early life was full of tragedy and persecution, which forged in him a burning hatred for the powers that wronged him and an iron will to never be powerless again. His genius was his weapon. He taught himself both science and the dark arts. He earned a scholarship to a university in America where he met his intellectual equal and future nemesis, Reed Richards. It was there his pride became his downfall. Victor built a machine to contact other dimensions to rescue his mother's soul. Richards pointed out a flaw in the math, but Victor's arrogance was too great. He thought Richards was jealous. He turned the machine on. It exploded, scarring his face and getting him expelled. But the real wound was to his ego. Blaming Reed Richards, Victor fled to a Tibetan monastery, where he forged a suit of armor and a new identity. In a final act of hubris, he put the mask's faceplate on while it was still red hot, sealing his fate. He returned to Latveria, overthrew its leader, and installed himself as its absolute ruler, Dr. Doom. Now let's see how this archetype could fit into the post-Endgame MCU. The theory doesn't need a word-for-word copy. Instead, it suggests a fusion. Maybe this Victor Von Doom was a contemporary of Tony Stark, an outcast for his radical theories blending tech and metaphysics. This is the man Pepper would find. Not a cackling villain, but a complex, tragic figure who truly believes that he alone knows how to save the world. He sees weakness and chaos and believes peace can only come through absolute order under one ruler, himself. When Pepper approaches him, he'd see the ultimate opportunity. Stark Industries is the key to making his theories a reality. But he wouldn't see Pepper as a partner. He'd see her as a patron, the keeper of a kingdom he plans to take for himself. He'd play the part, speaking of global security and honoring Tony's legacy, showing her designs for drone fleets and energy shields that would make Ultron look like a toy. He would be completely convincing. And Pepper, blinded by hope, would give him the keys to the kingdom. Access to Tony's labs, his AIs, his arc reactor schematics. She would believe she was empowering the world's savior, when in fact she was arming its future conqueror. It is important to remember that this direct link between Dr. Doom's origin and Stark technology, or Pepper Potts, is purely a fan theory and is not based on any confirmed MCU plans. Likewise, any persistent online rumors about Robert Downey Jr. returning as a variant of Dr. Doom are entirely unsubstantiated speculation. This is where it gets really interesting, bridging established MCU lore with one of the most anticipated villains ever. What do you think? Does tying Doom to Tony Stark's legacy make him a more compelling villain for the MCU? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Now we come to the heart of the tragedy. Pepper has found her champion. Victor Von Doom has found his arsenal. The stage is set at Stark Industries for the birth of either a savior or a tyrant. With full access to the Stark archives, Victor would work with a speed that would stun everyone, even Pepper. He wouldn't just build on Tony's work, he would reinvent it. He'd see the arc reactor not just as a power source, but as a key to energies Tony never dared touch. He'd look at the time-space GPS from Endgame and see a way to master reality itself. He would merge Tony's grounded science with his own more mystical theories. The project might be codenamed Latveria, a hint at his vision for a perfect, orderly world. On the surface, it would look like a dream come true. New defense drones, new energy shields. The suit of armor around the world would finally be taking shape. For a moment, Pepper would think she had done it. She had succeeded where Tony failed. But Victor's real work would be happening in secret. In a private lab, he would be building his true masterpiece. Not a defense system, but a control system. He'd be rebuilding the machine from his past, the one that blew up in his face, but this time perfected with Stark tech. His goal would be the same as it ever was, to conquer the laws of the universe, maybe to free his mother's soul, or maybe just to prove he was better than Stark. And this is where the accident happens, a perfect storm of hubris and power. In his attempt to harness some unknown energy, maybe from the quantum realm, maybe from a cosmic artifact, the experiment would overload. It wouldn't just be an explosion. It would be a blast of raw, untamed energy, a fusion of the ice science and sorcery. The blast would tear through the lab, scarring Victor horribly, but the wounds wouldn't just be physical. The energy would infuse his body, granting him powers he'd only dreamed of. It would also shatter what was left of his humanity, leaving only cold calculation and a messianic ambition now burned into his very soul. Lying there broken, he wouldn't blame his own pride. He'd need a scapegoat. And he'd find one in the ghost of the man whose legacy he was meant to continue, Tony Stark. He would convince himself Stark's tech was flawed, that his vision was too small, that Tony had somehow sabotaged him from beyond the grave. All his pain would curdle into a pure, focused hatred for the legacy of Iron Man. From the wreckage, he would rise. He'd use the remaining Stark resources to forge a new suit of armor, a perversion of the Iron Man suit, forged from Stark alloys but etched with mystical runes, powered by a corrupted arc reactor humming with unnatural energy, and capped with a cold, impassive mask, designed not to hide his scars but to project absolute, emotionless power. He would seize the global defense network he built for Pepper, turning the world's shield into its cage. He might even declare the Stark Industries campus as the sovereign territory of his new Latveria. He would become Dr. Doom, and Pepper Potts would have to face the horrifying truth. Her tribute to the love of her life gave birth to the monster Tony always knew was coming. She didn't just fund a villain, she built him from the ashes of her own grief. It's crucial to understand that this entire narrative, while compelling, is a speculative fan theory and is not supported by any official MCU announcements as of July 2025. Okay, I know what some of you are thinking. Hold on. Dr. Doom is a Fantastic Four villain. Tying him to Pepper and Tony just guts his character and his whole rivalry with Reed Richards. And that's a totally valid point. Doom's identity in the comics is built on his feud with Reed. Wouldn't this new origin rob us of that? Well, not necessarily. We have to look at how the MCU adapts things. It's never been a one-to-one copy of the comics. It's a remix. Its greatest strength is streamlining decades of comic history into one cohesive story. Like we said, Ultron's creator was changed from Hank Pym to Tony Stark. Why? Because at that point in the MCU, Tony was the character dealing with the themes of power and hubris. Making Ultron his creation made the story more personal and impactful for the universe they had built. The same logic applies here. As we move into the post-Endgame world, the most powerful legacy in the MCU isn't the Fantastic Four, who we haven't even met yet. It's Tony Stark. His influence is everywhere. Making the next big bad a direct result of that legacy makes the threat deeply personal for everyone, from Peter Parker to Happy Hogan to Morgan Stark. It grounds the new saga in the emotional core of the last one. This doesn't mean you cut the Fantastic Four out. In fact, it could make their arrival even better. Maybe Reed Richards is a consultant Pepper brings in to check Victor's math. Maybe Reed is the one who, just like in the comics, points out the flaw in the calculations, only for the arrogant Victor to ignore him. This keeps the core of their intellectual rivalry alive while still setting the origin story inside the Stark framework. Doom could then have two obsessions: the ghost of the man he feels he surpassed, Stark, and the living man who dared question him, Richards. Plus, this story gives Pepper Potts a powerful, tragic new arc. It forces her to confront the darkest possible outcome of her love for Tony. It sets her up for a journey of accountability. Could she be the one who has to lead the fight against the monster she created? The potential is huge. The theory doesn't erase Dr. Doom. It just recontextualizes him for the MCU. The pride, the genius, the tragedy, the armor, it's all still there. The only thing that changes is the catalyst. Instead of being forged against Reed Richards, he's forged from the legacy of Tony Stark. So, let's tie it all together. What this theory gives us is one of the most tragic and personal villain origins you could imagine. It starts with Pepper Potts, driven by love and grief, trying to finish her husband's final mission, a suit of armor around the world. Her search for a mind equal to Tony's leads her to Victor Von Doom, a wounded genius. Seeing a reflection of Tony's own fire, she hands him the keys to the kingdom, Stark's labs, his resources, her trust. But Victor's ambition corrupts everything. An experiment to prove his own superiority goes horribly wrong, leaving him scarred and shattered. He blames the ghost of Tony Stark, rises from the ashes in a twisted version of the Iron Man armor, and seizes the very defense network he was hired to create. The shield becomes a cage. The savior becomes a tyrant. And Pepper Potts, in her greatest act of hope, accidentally forges the very monster Tony Stark died to prevent. This theory makes Dr. Doom more than just a new villain. It makes him the ultimate consequence of the Infinity Saga, a homegrown catastrophe born from the best intentions. His arrival would force every hero to reckon with Tony's legacy in a new and terrifying way. It's a powerful story about how easily the road to hell can be paved with love and good intentions. And while it is entirely a fan theory, with no official confirmation from Marvel Studios, it presents a future for the MCU that is thematically rich, emotionally devastating, and a perfect fit for the world that Endgame left behind. But hey, that's just one theory. The best part about the MCU is that the future is still unwritten. So, what do you think? Could Pepper Potts accidentally create the next big bad? Is this a fitting origin for Doctor Doom, or do you have a different theory for how he'll show up? Share your ideas in the comments below.